In today's video, we're diving into a topic that has sparked confusion and curiosity over the years: the difference between the Philistines and the Palestinians. The names of these two groups sound strikingly similar, and both are associated with the same region, leading many to wonder if they might be the same people. In this deep dive, we'll explore the fascinating history behind the Philistines, an ancient people who once stood as one of Israel's most formidable adversaries, and the Palestinians, a modern group involved in the political struggles of the 21st century. Through this journey, we will clarify the connections between the two, debunk myths, and uncover how each group fits into the biblical and modern worlds. By the end of this video, you'll understand the distinct histories and roles of these two groups, unraveling the mystery once and for all. Let's begin with a look at the ancient Philistines, a people whose name echoes through the pages of the Bible. The Philistines were one of Israel's greatest enemies, frequently clashing with the Israelites over the course of centuries. They inhabited the coastal regions of Canaan, modern-day Gaza, and other major cities such as Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron. The story of Samson, the giant Goliath, and the infamous battles between Israel and Philistia are woven throughout the Old Testament. From the early days of the Judges to the reign of King David, the Philistines were a constant threat to Israel's survival. Their military power, advanced iron weaponry, and strategic position on the Mediterranean coast made them formidable adversaries. As we move through the history of the Philistines, we'll explore their role in the Bible and how their relationship with Israel shaped the course of biblical history. From the destruction of the Temple of Dagon to the iconic story of David defeating Goliath, the Philistines left an indelible mark on the pages of Scripture. But while their presence in the Bible is clear, their ultimate demise is just as significant. The Philistines were eventually defeated and assimilated by larger empires, and their name faded from history. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we encounter a very different group: the Palestinians. While their name might evoke echoes of the Philistines, their identity and role in history could not be more different. The Palestinians are a modern Arab population living in the region historically known as Palestine, which encompasses present-day Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. Their struggle for statehood and self-determination has been central to the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But despite the similarities in their names and geographical connections, the Philistines and Palestinians have no direct historical link. The name Palestine was given to the region by the Romans in the 2nd century AD, long after the Philistines had vanished. This name change was part of a strategy by the Romans to sever Jewish ties to the land and erase their connection to the region. However, the Palestinians are an ethnically Arab people with no genealogical ties to the ancient Philistines. So what is the real connection between these two groups? How did the name Palestine come to be associated with the modern Palestinian people? And what can we learn from the history of the Philistines and their ultimate downfall? These questions will guide our exploration as we journey through time, examining both ancient and modern history to uncover the truth. As we delve deeper into the biblical and historical narratives, we'll explore how the ancient Philistines and the modern Palestinians are shaped by their respective histories, cultures, and identities. We'll also look at the significant role the Philistines played in biblical prophecy and how modern prophecies continue to shape the future of the region. The tension between these two groups, separated by thousands of years, offers us valuable insights into the ongoing struggles that shape the Middle East today. But don't worry, we won't just focus on the past. We'll also take a look at the present-day realities facing the Palestinian people, who continue to fight for their rights, land, and identity. From their historical roots to the challenges they face today, the Palestinian struggle is deeply intertwined with the broader political dynamics of the region. By the end of this video, you will have a clearer understanding of the true differences between the Philistines and the Palestinians. You'll understand how their stories are connected to the land, the Bible, and modern-day politics. And perhaps most importantly, you'll come away with a greater appreciation for the complexities of history, identity, and the ongoing search for peace in the Middle East. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the fascinating history of the Philistines and the Palestinians, uncovering truths that may surprise you and challenge your understanding of this important topic. The Philistines were an ancient people who appear frequently in the Bible as one of Israel's greatest adversaries. Their name, often evoked in the context of conflict and struggle, has become synonymous with opposition to the Israelites. The Philistines primarily inhabited the coastal regions of Canaan, which today includes areas like Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath. This territory, known as Philistia, was their heartland and became their civilization's center of power by the 12th century BC, when they settled in the southern coastal plains of Canaan. The Philistines are commonly associated with the Sea Peoples, a group of naval raiders who wreaked havoc in the eastern Mediterranean during the Late Bronze Age. Many scholars believe that the Philistines originated from regions such as Cyprus or other Mediterranean locales before migrating to the southern coast of Canaan. The Sea Peoples' invasion and settlement in the region were a pivotal moment in the history of Canaan and laid the foundation for the rise of Philistia as a distinct and influential civilization. One of the most significant aspects of the Philistine culture was their advanced knowledge of ironworking. While the Israelites were still using bronze weapons, the Philistines had mastered the art of smelting iron, which provided them with a major military advantage. This technological edge made them formidable opponents in battle, and their iron weapons allowed them to maintain control over much of the region, especially in the face of Israelite resistance. The Bible frequently portrays the Philistines as a pagan people who worshiped multiple gods. Among these gods were Dagon, the god of grain and fertility, Baal, a storm god, and Ashtoreth, a goddess of love and war. The polytheistic nature of their religion stood in sharp contrast to the monotheistic worship of Yahweh by the Israelites. This religious divide was a key factor in the ongoing conflict between the two nations, as the Israelites viewed the Philistines not only as a political threat, but as enemies of their faith. This distinction played an important role in how the Israelites perceived and responded to the Philistines, often invoking divine judgment on them in the face of their oppression. One of the most famous stories involving the Philistines is the tale of Samson, found in Judges 13-16. Samson, a judge of Israel, was renowned for his supernatural strength, which he used in his ongoing battles with the Philistines. His final act of destroying the Temple of Dagon, where he killed thousands of Philistines, remains a vivid example of the tension between the two peoples. The destruction of the temple symbolized not only Samson's personal victory, but also the triumph of Yahweh over the false gods worshipped by the Philistines. Samson's strength was seen as a direct gift from God, and his battles against the Philistines reflected the Israelites' broader struggle against their enemies. Another iconic encounter between the Philistines and the Israelites is the story of David and Goliath, as recounted in 1 Samuel 17. Goliath, a giant Philistine warrior, challenged the Israelites to send out a champion to fight him. David, a young shepherd who would later become king, volunteered to face Goliath. Armed only with a sling and a stone, David struck down the giant, defeating him and causing the Philistines to retreat. This story is one of the most well-known in the Bible, and it encapsulates many of the themes present in the conflict between Israel and the Philistines. David's victory, made possible by God's intervention, served as a symbol of the triumph of Israel and the power of Yahweh. The Philistines' role in biblical history cannot be overstated. Throughout the Old Testament, they are often depicted as oppressors of Israel, forcing the Israelites to fight for their freedom. In 1 Samuel 4, the Philistines even capture the Ark of the Covenant after defeating the Israelites in battle. However, God's power intervened, inflicting plagues on the Philistines, forcing them to return the Ark. This episode demonstrates a recurring biblical theme: divine judgment upon those who oppress Israel. While the Philistines were technologically advanced, their arrogance and idolatry led to their eventual downfall. The decline of the Philistine civilization was both gradual and inevitable. With the rise of larger empires such as the Babylonians, the once dominant Philistine cities were reduced to mere shadows of their former selves. The Babylonian Empire, under King Nebuchadnezzar II, conquered Philistia in the 6th century BC, marking a definitive end to the Philistine power. The cities of Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gaza, Ekron, and Gath were either destroyed or absorbed into the vast expanse of the Babylonian Empire, which was expanding its influence over the entire region. Interestingly, it was the Romans who later renamed the region of Philistia as Palestine, after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 AD. The Roman Emperor Hadrian, seeking to erase Jewish ties to the land, decided to rename the province of Judea as Palestina, a nod to the ancient Philistines who had long since disappeared as a distinct people by then. The Roman strategy was clear. By renaming the land after their ancient enemies, the Romans hoped to sever the Jews' historical and cultural connection to the land. This new name, Palestine, stuck and continued to be used by subsequent empires, including the Byzantine Empire and the Ottoman Empire, right up to the 20th century. But by the time the name Palestine became widespread, the Philistines themselves had long since vanished. They were absorbed into the larger currents of history, and their unique cultural identity faded. The Bible, however, continues to portray the Philistines as significant players in the ongoing story of Israel. From the epic battles of Samson to the triumphs of David, the Philistines remain a recurring theme in the biblical narrative. But their existence as a separate and identifiable group came to an end centuries before the Romans reshaped the region's geography and history. In contrast to the Philistines, the modern Palestinians are a people with a distinct and ongoing struggle for identity, independence, and territorial control. Unlike the ancient Philistines, who disappeared after being conquered by larger empires, the Palestinians are a living, breathing people whose history is intertwined with the events of the 20th and 21st centuries. The term Palestinian refers specifically to the Arab people who have historically inhabited the region of Palestine, which includes modern-day Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. The modern Palestinian people are ethnically Arab, with the majority being Sunni Muslim, though there is also a significant Christian minority, particularly in cities like Bethlehem, Ramallah, and East Jerusalem. The Palestinian identity, as it exists today, was forged over the last century in response to the dramatic political changes in the region, especially following the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the establishment of the British Mandate in Palestine during the early 20th century. The modern Palestinian struggle for self-determination and statehood became more prominent after the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, a key event in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Palestinian identity evolved during the period of British rule from 1917 to 1948. During this time, the local Arab population began to organize politically in response to growing Jewish immigration to the region, which was supported by the Balfour Declaration of 1917. The Balfour Declaration, issued by the British government, expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This, coupled with the growing Zionist movement, led to tensions between the Arab and Jewish populations. The local Arabs, who had lived in the region for centuries, began to form a collective national identity to resist the Zionist project and to maintain control over the land they considered their homeland. The Palestinian political movement gained momentum as a result of the increasing Jewish immigration to the region, which was part of the broader Zionist effort to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This struggle intensified after World War II, particularly after the Holocaust, which further fueled the desire for a Jewish state. As Jewish immigration to Palestine increased, the Palestinian population, primarily consisting of Arabs, became more organized in its opposition to Zionism. Palestinian leaders began to form political parties and organizations that sought to defend the rights of Arabs in the region and resist the establishment of the State of Israel. The historical connection between the name Palestine and the ancient Philistines has often led to confusion, especially in modern discussions about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. However, it's important to understand that while the name of the region has ancient origins, the people who are referred to as Palestinians today have no direct connection to the Philistines of the Bible. The term Palestine itself originates from the Roman Empire, specifically after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 AD. Following the revolt, the Roman Emperor Hadrian sought to diminish the Jewish identity of the region by renaming it Palestina. This new name was intended to erase the connection between the Jewish people and the land of Israel by associating it with their ancient enemies, the Philistines. At this time, the Philistines had long disappeared as a distinct people, absorbed by larger empires such as the Babylonians, Persians, and Greeks. Thus, the name Palestine became a geographical designation rather than a cultural or ethnic one. For centuries, the name Palestine referred to the general region that included parts of modern-day Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Under the British Mandate, which lasted from 1917 to 1948, the term Palestine referred to the entire area under British control, including both Jewish and Arab populations. During this period, the term Palestinian began to be used more widely to describe the Arab inhabitants of the region. The local Arab population, which had long been part of the broader Arab world, began to identify as Palestinians, particularly in response to the growing Zionist movement and Jewish immigration to the region. The Palestinian identity, as it exists today, is a relatively recent phenomenon that emerged over the course of the 20th century. While the name Palestine had been used for centuries to describe the land, it was not until the British Mandate and the increasing tensions between Jews and Arabs that the Palestinian people began to develop a distinct national identity. This identity was shaped by a variety of factors, including the political, social, and economic changes brought about by the British Mandate and the subsequent establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. It's also important to note that the Palestinians are a modern Arab people with no genealogical or cultural connection to the Philistines of biblical times. The modern Palestinians are primarily Arabs who have lived in the region for centuries. While the name Palestine has ancient roots, the people who identify as Palestinians today are ethnically Arab, and their history and culture are tied to the broader Arab world. They are part of a long-standing Arab presence in the region, which stretches back to the 7th century AD, when Arab Muslims conquered the area. The Palestinians' identity as a distinct people emerged in the context of the political struggle for land and self-determination. This struggle became particularly intense after the end of World War I, when the Ottoman Empire collapsed and the British took control of Palestine. During the British Mandate period, the local Arab population began to organize politically in response to the growing Zionist movement, which sought to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This period saw the rise of Palestinian nationalism as the local Arabs began to view themselves as a unified people with a shared identity and a common cause. To resist the establishment of a Jewish state and to maintain control over the land they considered their homeland. As Jewish immigration to Palestine increased during the early 20th century, tensions between the Jewish and Arab populations grew. The Palestinians, who had lived in the region for centuries, began to organize politically and militarily to resist the Zionist project. This resistance took various forms, from protests and strikes to armed uprisings. The Palestinians sought to protect their land and preserve their way of life, which they feared would be undermined by the influx of Jewish immigrants. The creation of the State of Israel in 1948 marked a turning point in the history of the Palestinian people. After the United Nations approved a partition plan in 1947 to divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, the State of Israel was declared on May 14, 1948. This event led to the first Arab-Israeli war, as neighboring Arab countries, along with Palestinian Arab militias, sought to prevent the establishment of the Jewish state. The war resulted in a decisive victory for Israel, but it also led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, many of whom became refugees and were forced to flee to neighboring countries like Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. The modern-day Palestinians continue to struggle for recognition, autonomy, and the establishment of a sovereign state. Despite their long history in the region, they are often portrayed as the underdogs in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as they fight for their right to self-determination in a land that has been a source of conflict for centuries. The quest for statehood has been the driving force behind Palestinian politics and has shaped their national identity. The Palestinian people, as we know them today, primarily live in the territories of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. These areas, which were once part of the British Mandate of Palestine, have become the focal points of the Palestinian struggle. The West Bank is currently under the partial control of the Palestinian Authority, PA, a governing body created as part of the Oslo Accords in the 1990s. The Gaza Strip, on the other hand, is controlled by Hamas, an Islamist political and militant group that took control of the area in 2007 after a violent conflict with the Palestinian Authority. The division between the West Bank and Gaza Strip has created a political rift among Palestinians. The Palestinian Authority, which is based in the West Bank, has been recognized by many nations as the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, while Hamas, based in Gaza, operates independently and is considered a terrorist organization by Israel, the United States, and the European Union. The division between these two political factions has made it difficult for the Palestinians to present a united front in their quest for statehood and has complicated efforts to achieve peace with Israel. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is centered around several key issues, including territorial boundaries, security, the status of Jerusalem, and the right of return for Palestinian refugees. For Palestinians, the establishment of a Palestinian state is paramount, and they seek to have East Jerusalem as the capital of their future state. The issue of refugees remains a deeply emotional and contentious topic, as millions of Palestinians continue to live in exile, displaced from their ancestral homes in what is now Israel. The Palestinian refugee crisis began in 1948, when more than 700,000 Palestinians were displaced during the creation of the State of Israel. Many of these refugees fled to neighboring countries like Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria, while others ended up in refugee camps in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The right of return for these refugees and their descendants has been a central issue in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as Palestinians demand the ability to return to their homes, while Israel fears that granting this right would alter the demographic balance of the country. In addition to the issue of refugees, the status of Jerusalem remains one of the most contentious issues between Israelis and Palestinians. Both sides claim the city as their capital, and its religious significance to Jews, Muslims, and Christians has made it a focal point of the conflict. Israel considers Jerusalem its capital, while the Palestinians envision East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestinian state. The international community remains divided on this issue, with many countries supporting the idea of Jerusalem being a shared city, while others support one side's claim over the other. The geopolitical landscape of the Middle East has also played a significant role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Over the years, numerous countries and international organizations have attempted to mediate peace between Israel and the Palestinians. The United Nations, the United States, the European Union, and Arab countries have all played roles in attempting to broker peace agreements, but a lasting solution has yet to be found. The Oslo Accord, signed in the 1990s, represented a significant step toward peace as they established the Palestinian Authority and granted limited self-rule to the Palestinians in parts of the West Bank and Gaza. However, the Oslo Accords were never fully implemented, and both sides have violated key provisions of the agreements over the years. The peace process has stalled in recent years, and the prospect of a two-state solution, which envisions a separate Jewish and Palestinian state living side by side in peace, seems increasingly unlikely. Despite the challenges and setbacks, the Palestinian people remain steadfast in their pursuit of statehood and self-determination. The Palestinian cause has gained support from many nations around the world, especially in the Arab world, and Palestinian leaders continue to advocate for their rights on the international stage. However, the lack of a unified Palestinian leadership and the ongoing division between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas have made it difficult to present a clear and cohesive plan for the future. The relationship between the Palestinian people and the region of Palestine is deeply rooted in history, yet it is also marked by modern political complexities. While the ancient Philistines had long disappeared by the time the name Palestine was resurrected by the Romans, the modern Palestinians are an active, resilient community that has endured countless struggles to assert their identity and right to self-determination. However, the constant struggle for recognition and peace remains, shaped by both historical events and modern political realities. As we delve deeper into the modern Palestinian struggle, we must also address the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The creation of the State of Israel in 1948 was a defining moment in the history of the region. The United Nations Partition Plan, which sought to divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, was rejected by the Arab states and Palestinian leadership, resulting in the First Arab-Israeli War. After the war, Israel emerged victorious, but the consequences for the Palestinian population were dire. Over 700,000 Palestinians were displaced from their homes, leading to what is now known as the Nakba, or catastrophe, in Palestinian memory. This mass displacement created a Palestinian refugee crisis that continues to this day. the refugees who fled or were expelled from their homes during the 1948 war, and their descendants now number in the millions, many living in refugee camps across the Middle East, primarily in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and the Palestinian territories of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The issue of the Palestinian right of return remains a central and unresolved issue in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Palestinians argue that they have the right to return to their ancestral homes, while Israel insists that allowing such a return would alter the demographic balance of the country and threaten the Jewish character of the state. As time passed, the Palestinians' political consciousness grew, particularly in response to the increasing presence of Zionism and Jewish immigration to the region. The Palestinian national movement began to take shape, with leaders like Yasser Arafat emerging as central figures. The Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, founded in 1964, became the representative body for Palestinians and their aspirations for statehood. Over time, the PLO gained recognition as the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, and its struggle for independence gained international support. However, the conflict is not just about land. It is also deeply entwined with issues of identity, security, and culture. For Palestinians, the struggle for independence is inseparable from their sense of self. Palestinian identity has been shaped by centuries of history in the region, and it remains a defining element of their cause today. The Palestinian people see themselves as the rightful heirs to the land of Palestine, with a deep historical and cultural connection that stretches back to ancient times. The modern political landscape of the Palestinian territories is marked by division. The Palestinian Authority, PA, which governs parts of the West Bank, and Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, represent two competing political factions that have yet to reconcile their differences. This division has been a significant obstacle to achieving Palestinian unity and a cohesive strategy for the future. While the PA has engaged in peace talks with Israel and is generally recognized by the international community, Hamas refuses to recognize Israel's right to exist and advocates for a more militant approach. The Gaza Strip, under Hamas's control, has become a focal point for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The region has been subjected to multiple Israeli military operations in response to rocket fire from Gaza, and the humanitarian situation in Gaza has deteriorated dramatically. The blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt has created a dire economic situation, with high unemployment, a lack of basic infrastructure, and limited access to resources. The Palestinian people in Gaza face immense challenges, and their daily lives are marked by poverty, displacement, and the constant threat of violence. Meanwhile, the West Bank, under the Palestinian Authority, has also seen its own struggles. Israeli settlements continue to expand in the West Bank, creating tension and undermining efforts for a two-state solution. The construction of settlements in the occupied territories is considered illegal under international law, though Israel disputes this. These settlements, along with the ongoing military occupation of the West Bank, have contributed to an atmosphere of distrust and hostility between Israelis and Palestinians. The ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which has been central to the history of the region for decades, is often seen through the lens of territorial disputes and military struggles. Yet it is essential to recognize that this conflict is also deeply intertwined with issues of identity, religion, and international politics. For Palestinians, the struggle is not just about land. It is about survival, self-determination, and the preservation of their culture and heritage. One of the most prominent aspects of Palestinian identity is the connection to the land. Palestinians view the land of Palestine as their ancestral homeland, a place where they have lived for centuries, and their attachment to the land is a central component of their national identity. This connection is not just historical, it is deeply emotional and spiritual. For Palestinians, the land represents their history, their culture, and their right to live freely and securely. However, the reality of living under occupation and displacement has profoundly shaped the Palestinian experience. The Israeli occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which began in 1967, has significantly impacted the daily lives of Palestinians. Israeli military control, the construction of settlements, and the separation barrier have all contributed to a sense of disconnection and disenfranchisement. For many Palestinians, the occupation has led to restrictions on movement, economic hardship, and a lack of basic services, all of which have made life in the West Bank and Gaza Strip increasingly difficult. The Gaza Strip in particular has been the site of intense conflict and suffering. Under Hamas control since 2007, Gaza has faced numerous military operations from Israel in response to rocket fire and militant activity. The Israeli blockade imposed by both Israel and Egypt has created a dire humanitarian situation with high levels of poverty, unemployment, and a lack of access to essential services such as healthcare, electricity, and clean water. The people of Gaza live under constant threat of violence, and their future remains uncertain. While the situation in Gaza has captured much of the international attention, the West Bank is not without its own challenges. Israeli settlements continue to expand in the West Bank, despite being considered illegal under international law. These settlements are often built on land that Palestinians claim for their future state, further complicating the prospects for peace. The construction of these settlements, along with the military occupation, has led to frequent clashes between Israeli settlers, the Israeli military, and Palestinian residents. The situation in the West Bank is marked by tension, distrust, and violence, as both sides continue to struggle for control over the land. The status of Jerusalem is perhaps the most contentious issue of all. Both Israelis and Palestinians claim Jerusalem as their capital, and the city holds immense religious significance for Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike. The city's old city, with its holy sites such as the Western Wall, the Dome of the Rock, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, is a focal point of the conflict. Israel considers Jerusalem its undivided capital, while Palestinians view East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestinian state. The international community remains divided on the issue, with some countries recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, while others support the idea of a shared city or East Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital. The lack of progress toward a two-state solution is a reflection of the deep political, religious, and ideological divides between Israelis and Palestinians. The two-state solution, which envisions an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel, has been the cornerstone of peace efforts for decades. However, the obstacles to achieving this solution are significant. The continued expansion of Israeli settlements, the division between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, the status of Jerusalem, and the ongoing violence all contribute to the complexity of the situation. The international community has attempted to mediate peace between Israelis and Palestinians for years, with little success. Various peace processes, including the Oslo Accords, the Camp David Summit, and the Annapolis Conference, have sought to bring both sides to the negotiating table. However, these efforts have often faltered due to a lack of trust, entrenched positions, and failure to address the core issues of the conflict. The most recent efforts, such as the Trump administration's deal of the century, have been met with skepticism and rejection by many Palestinians, who feel that their rights and aspirations are being overlooked. The struggle for Palestinian statehood and self-determination is far from over. Over the decades, the Palestinian people have faced numerous challenges, from the displacement caused by the creation of Israel in 1948 to the ongoing military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Despite the hardships, the Palestinian cause remains at the forefront of global geopolitics, drawing attention from international organizations, governments, and activists around the world. The quest for an independent Palestinian state is a long-standing issue that touches on the deeply held beliefs of identity, justice, and human rights. Palestinians see themselves as the rightful inhabitants of the land, and their connection to it goes beyond political claims. It is a matter of personal and collective identity. Their historical presence in the region, stretching back for centuries, forms the foundation of their claims. They view their struggle not only as one for political autonomy, but as a fight for dignity and recognition as a people with a history and culture that deserves to be honored. For Palestinians, this battle is not just about gaining a piece of land. It's about reclaiming their narrative and establishing their place in the world. One of the central aspects of Palestinian identity is the notion of the right of return. This concept is rooted in the events of 1948, when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced from their homes during the creation of Israel. Many Palestinians fled or were expelled from their land, and their descendants continue to live as refugees in neighboring countries and within the Palestinian territories. The right of return refers to the claim that these refugees and their descendants should have the ability to return to their ancestral homes. This issue remains one of the most contentious aspects of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The right of return has been a central theme in Palestinian political discourse, and it continues to be a key demand in peace negotiations. Palestinians argue that the displacement of their people in 1948 was an injustice that must be rectified. However, the Israeli government views the right of return as a threat to the Jewish character of the State of Israel. Allowing millions of Palestinian refugees and their descendants to return would alter the demographic makeup of the country, which Israel fears would undermine its identity as a Jewish state. This clash over the right of return remains a significant obstacle to peace, as both sides hold firmly to their positions. In addition to the right of return, Palestinians also demand sovereignty over the land that they believe is rightfully theirs. The West Bank and Gaza Strip, which are home to millions of Palestinians, are seen as the core of any future Palestinian state. However, the ongoing Israeli occupation of these territories and the expansion of Israeli settlements have made the realization of a Palestinian state increasingly difficult. The construction of settlements on Palestinian land is seen by Palestinians as an attempt to undermine their claim to the land and to make the idea of a two-state solution unfeasible. The Israeli government, on the other hand, argues that security concerns justify its control over these territories. The presence of Israeli settlements and military installations in the West Bank and Gaza is framed as necessary for protecting Israeli citizens from Palestinian militant groups and for maintaining Israel's security in a volatile region. The issue of security is a major point of contention between Israelis and Palestinians, as both sides have been victims of violence over the years, and both fear for their future safety. The division between the West Bank and Gaza Strip has also played a significant role in the Palestinian struggle for statehood. The Palestinian Authority, PA, which governs the West Bank, has sought to negotiate with Israel for a two-state solution, while Hamas, which controls Gaza, has taken a more militant stance. The rivalry between these two political factions has created a fragmented Palestinian leadership, making it difficult for the Palestinians to present a unified position in negotiations with Israel. The division between the PA and Hamas has led to internal strife, weakening the Palestinian cause and making it more difficult to achieve political unity. International support for the Palestinian cause remains strong, particularly among Arab countries and in the broader Muslim world. Palestinian leaders continue to push for recognition of Palestine as a sovereign state within the borders of the 1967 lines, which includes the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. While many countries, including those in the European Union, have recognized Palestine as a state, others, such as the United States, have not granted full recognition, citing the lack of a final peace agreement with Israel. The path toward peace and a lasting resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains fraught with challenges, but it is not without hope. Despite the obstacles and setbacks, both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, continue to face a complex set of issues that must be addressed before any meaningful progress can be made. The struggle for Palestinian statehood and self-determination is, at its core, a human struggle, one that speaks to the universal desire for dignity, justice, and the right to live in peace. The political and territorial divisions between Israelis and Palestinians have been exacerbated by deep-seated historical grievances, religious tensions, and competing national narratives. For the Palestinians, the creation of Israel in 1948 and the subsequent displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians remain a source of profound pain and loss. This event, known as the Nakba, has shaped Palestinian identity and their collective memory of dispossession. The right of return for Palestinian refugees who were forced to flee their homes remains a key demand in Palestinian political discourse. However, this issue continues to be a major sticking point in negotiations, as Israel sees a return of millions of Palestinian refugees as a threat to the country's demographic makeup. For Israel, the establishment of the state was a moment of profound significance, particularly after the horrors of the Holocaust. Israel views its security as paramount, especially in a region that has been marked by conflict for much of its history. The existence of a Jewish state in the heart of the Middle East is seen by many Israelis as the culmination of a long history of persecution and the fulfillment of a biblical and historical right to the land. Israel's security concerns, especially in the face of hostile neighbors and ongoing violence, are central to its approach to the conflict. The Israeli government argues that its control over certain territories is necessary to protect the safety of its citizens, which complicates the negotiations for peace. As the conflict drags on, the international community has tried to mediate peace, but with little success. Many nations have recognized the Palestinian right to self-determination and statehood, and Palestinian leaders continue to seek international recognition and support for their cause. However, the political divisions within Palestinian society, especially between the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza, have created further difficulties in presenting a unified front. This lack of unity within the Palestinian leadership has made it harder to engage in productive negotiations with Israel. The Oslo Accords, signed in the 1990s, offered a glimmer of hope for peace as they established a framework for negotiations and allowed for Palestinian self-rule in parts of the West Bank and Gaza. However, the Accords did not address the key issues, such as the status of Jerusalem, the right of return for Palestinian refugees, and the borders of a future Palestinian state, in a way that could bring about a lasting solution. The failure to fully implement the Oslo Accords and the subsequent outbreak of violence during the Second Intifada in the early 2000s underscored the deep divisions and lack of trust between the two sides. The international community, including the United Nations, the United States, the European Union, and regional powers, has continued to push for a two-state solution where both Israel and a sovereign Palestine can coexist side by side. However, the vision of a two-state solution has become increasingly difficult to achieve as Israeli settlements continue to expand in the West Bank, complicating the prospects for an independent Palestinian state. The Israeli government has also continued to assert its control over Jerusalem, a city that both Israelis and Palestinians claim as their capital. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the situation remains dire. Hamas, an Islamist militant group, controls the Gaza Strip and has refused to recognize Israel's right to exist, calling for armed resistance against Israeli occupation. The Gaza Strip has been the site of numerous military operations and blockades, creating a humanitarian crisis that affects millions of Palestinians. Gaza's infrastructure has been devastated by repeated conflicts, and the people living there face immense hardship. The blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt has restricted the flow of goods and people in and out of Gaza, further exacerbating the suffering of its residents. As we reflect on the complex history of the Palestinians and their ongoing struggle for self-determination, it becomes evident that this is not merely a political conflict. It is a deeply human one. The Palestinian quest for a homeland is rooted in centuries of history, culture, and a profound attachment to the land they call home. However, their journey toward peace and independence has been marred by centuries of displacement, conflict, and broken promises, leaving a people whose identity and hopes are deeply intertwined with the land and their collective future. The story of the Palestinians is a story of resilience. It is a narrative that speaks to the endurance of a people who have faced the hardships of displacement, exile, and occupation. Despite these challenges, the Palestinian people have remained steadfast in their pursuit of justice, dignity, and the right to live in peace. Their struggle is not just for political independence, but for the recognition of their humanity, their culture, and their undeniable connection to the land of Palestine. The Palestinian identity has evolved over time, shaped by the broader Arab nationalist movements of the 20th century and the political realities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. From the moment the British Mandate ended and the State of Israel was established in 1948, Palestinians have faced immense challenges in maintaining their presence in the land they consider their own. The Nakba, or catastrophe, marks a painful chapter in their history, one that continues to resonate in the hearts and minds of Palestinians today. The refugees who fled or were expelled from their homes in 1948 and their descendants still long for the day when they can return to their ancestral land, a right they hold dear but one that remains elusive. The ongoing Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the blockade of the Gaza Strip have further complicated the path to peace. These realities shape the lives of millions of Palestinians, whose daily struggles are marked by restrictions on movement, limited access to resources, and a lack of basic infrastructure. The expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank continues to undermine the prospects of a two-state solution, creating a physical and political barrier to the creation of a viable Palestinian state. At the same time, the division between the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza has deepened the internal divisions within Palestinian society, making it difficult to present a united front in negotiations. However, despite these challenges, the Palestinian people continue to dream of a future where they can live in peace and security. The desire for an independent Palestinian state, with East Jerusalem as its capital, remains a powerful aspiration. The international community, while divided on the issue, has recognized the Palestinian right to self-determination. Yet the lack of a unified leadership, the failure of peace talks, and the continuing violence between Israelis and Palestinians have made the realization of this dream seem increasingly remote. The question that looms large is, what will it take for peace to prevail? Will the wounds of the past ever heal? Will the dreams of millions of Palestinians for a homeland of their own be realized? The path to peace is long and fraught with obstacles, but it is not impossible. The key to peace lies in mutual recognition, respect for human rights, and a commitment to justice for all people in the region, Israelis and Palestinians alike. It is crucial that we remember that, at the heart of this conflict, there are human beings, people with hopes, dreams, and the desire to live in peace. The Palestinian struggle is a struggle for dignity, for the right to exist as a people with their own history and future. It is a struggle for justice, for the recognition of the wrongs that have been done to them, and for the opportunity to build a better future for themselves and their children. In the end, the story of the Palestinians is a story of resilience and hope. Despite the hardships they face, the Palestinian people continue to hold on to the belief that one day they will achieve their dream of an independent state. Their struggle is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the enduring desire for freedom and justice. It is a reminder that, even in the face of adversity, the pursuit of peace and dignity is worth fighting for. The path to peace may be uncertain, but the journey of the Palestinian people is far from over. The hope for a future where Palestinians can live in freedom and security remains alive, and it is a hope that resonates not only within the hearts of Palestinians, but also among all those who seek a just and lasting peace in the Middle East. The question now is not whether peace is possible, but how it can be achieved, through dialogue, understanding, and a commitment to justice for all.